In that selection of pictures, I don't know if you guys remember in Sesame Street, I believe. Remember that lesson, that game, where they show you 4 things or 6 things that were supposed to be the same, but one of them was different? Y'all remember that? Hands up if you remember what I'm talking about. Right? One of these things is different, right? And so in the images that I was going to share with you, there were about 5 pictures that were different from the rest of the pictures. And they would have been different to you because you might not recognize the images, you might not have known the people, and a couple of them would have been immediately different to you because they were in black and white. So since I'm a storyteller by nature, I'm going to paint you those pictures. So I want you to imagine these with me. One of the pictures was a picture of Emmett Till. Familiar with Emmett Till? Yeah. The picture was not the one that you might be afraid I might have had on the screen. And the picture was actually the one of him where he was unharmed and beautiful and just a young boy of probably the age of, I believe, 12 or 13. In that picture, he had a beautiful smile. The same smile that allegedly offended a white woman and offended some family members of hers who proceeded to beat him savagely until they killed him. The picture transformed into one that it was hardly recognizable to his own mother. And actually consider the fact that she decided to show that picture to the world became one of the pivotal moments of the civil rights movements, right? Because it was right in your face telling you, here's what happened to my child. In that slide, you would have seen a picture of a boy who will look much like any boy that visits East End Neighborhood House. Young, African-American, 12 years old, vibrant, excited, talkative, and his name was Tamir Rice. And his life was taken violently, I would say in my own opinion. You could take your own stand. As he was shot dead because someone called saying that there was a boy, or perhaps it was a man, that was branding a gun, and so the police officer shot him. And I tell you, I try not to watch these violent videos that we now have access to, but for some reason I watched that one over and over again, and it wasn't even a second before he got shot, my estimation. And so let's also remember that he was shot in a state that has a law that allows you to carry a gun in the open. Let's keep that in mind. If he so much looked like a man that was struck. But there was no assessment to the situation, and so we lost him. In the video, you would have also seen a picture of a young white boy, red freckle, with beautiful red hair, sitting on a chair, and around him was a bunch of logs and a very messy space. And for some of us may have been, dangerous for a child to be sitting in, but it was a trailer in the space in his uncle where he lives near Kentucky as part of the Appalachian neighborhood. Let me see, it was a town nearing the coal fields of eastern Kentucky in a county that was formed 19 years before the Civil War. And the trailer had no electricity and no running water. No electricity and no running water. You would have seen in the video a picture of a mother with her children sitting on a sofa wondering where she was going to go next, as she lived in a motel in Florida because Hurricane Maria had forced her to leave her beloved Puerto Rico, and she was now living in a motel but wondering if she could stay there because time's up. The voucher is done in July and you got to go somewhere. You can't stay here, even if you don't have a home. And she didn't know if she was going to go home to electricity or running water. She didn't know where she was going to go. She didn't know if she was going to stay in Florida or she was going to go to Puerto Rico. She didn't know where her home was going to be. And in the video, you would have seen a little boy named Adonias who was 5 years old, who didn't care where he went as long as he could do so with his father. Except he was separated from his father at the border of Mexico under a new rule that we take and kidnap children away from their families. And Adonias, you would have seen him looking out of a window, looking very sad, because he's now suffering from post-traumatic distress after being separated from his father for 10 weeks. For those of us who are parents, can you imagine being separated from your child for 10 weeks? In another state, and you don't know with who. And the little boy cringes at the mere look of a toy syringe, because the claim is that he kept being, they kept putting some sort of medication on him to keep him asleep and to keep him calm for 10 weeks. And in the same video, you would have seen a black and white picture taken many, many, many years ago of a group of women, white women, sitting around the table, learning some kind of lesson. And what you would have learned was that I would have told you that they were women at East End Neighborhood House. And they were in a class learning lessons about being a parent, about different life skills and things that they needed to learn as they acclimated themselves to their new country. Because imagine, these women were Hungarian. And we had made a table and a space for them to be welcomed into this country and become acclimated to their new world. Imagine that. So the point was that I would have shown you images of people, hence the title of the speech, people, that maybe they were different, but again, when you kind of look at it deeper, you realize they really aren't different from the other pictures. And so you have to ask yourself, what's happening, right? We're here celebrating today people. The Mighty 30, the service is 1,200 people every year with what I like to call, and don't like to own, and would like to increase, a $2 budget. Right? Seriously, a $2 million budget. But $2 million for 1,200 people. I know some folks in corporate America that will slice their wrist if they knew that's all they had to do all the work that we do. And that's what we're here celebrating them today. So in fact, the people that I was going to show you in the images are people, and a fact that, like, some of us might think a whole lot of things, but we put our focus, because we do what we do, on poverty. Child poverty affects more than 11.5 million children in the United States, and according to UNICEF and the World Bank, more than 387 million children around the globe live in extreme poverty. According to Feed America, 40.6 million people live in poverty. Feeding America also asserts that 65% of them had to choose between medical care and food. 63% of them were from people and families, because we like to point out percentages of child poverty, but I'd like you to remember that children live with families, right? And so when we talk about poverty, you're talking about the whole family. I get why we separate the numbers, but let's be clear, they live with a mama, a daddy, or somebody else, right? 51 of these people, 51% of the same number were employed, hungry, 18% were elderly, and 8% were homeless. 1 in 6 children may not know where their next meal comes from. 1 in 6 Americans lives below the poverty line. Johnny, the little red freckled boy that I was talking to you, There's an county that has one of the lowest median household incomes in the states, with a staggering 41.5% of the residents fall below poverty line. The median household income, perhaps almost the lowest in the country, except for that one of Puerto Rico, because by the way, Puerto Rico is part of the United States, if you didn't know that by now. And let me clear that up. Part of the United States of North America. Everybody clear on that? All right. Hurricane Maria dealt a vicious blow to an already struggling island that's been in recession for more than a decade, with a poverty rate of nearly 50%. The hurricane destroyed more than a third of about 1.2 million occupied homes. Here in Cleveland, according to my good friends of the Center for Community Solution, the median income is about $51,000. But for Cleveland, it's about $27,000. And for Youngstown, being the lowest, at $25,000. The median income. People, all looking like the same, huh? All this while our black and brown boys and men are being murdered by some trigger-happy, nervous, some, I did say some, because folks get offended. I'm not against all police officers, just the ones that kill people with no good reason. And they are also dying at the hands of their own peers who get a hand on guns that we can't even imagine being in our neighborhood because, well, we have loosey-goosey gun control laws and we have to protect their NRA pockets, right? And by the way, I like to share that our black and brown children and families are also in danger, imagine this, from callers. Special public announcement. We really do rent Airbnb apartments. We really do own nice condos in New York City. We sit at coffee shops. We barbecue in parks, and sometimes we wear a t-shirt with a Puerto Rican flag on it. All right? We like to use coupons. Who don't like to use a coupon? So you might use a coupon at Hobby Lobby and CVS, okay? We still cut grass. We still encourage our children to cut grass and develop self-responsibility and gain a sense of entrepreneurship. And so they also might sell a bottle of water while a game is going on. So please, don't call about that either. And some of us actually go to Subway. I particularly don't care for Subway. But we go to Subway with our family and eat our sandwich or two. We even breathe. Please don't call on us. 1,200 immigrants' children were lost by the United States. 1,200. They've not been found. I'm sorry, did you think that was the same number from the children who were recently placed in cages? That's separate. That's not the same number. Hundreds of children were separated recently, that's the one you saw in the news, from their parents and are still being returned at very, very slow pace. Now they want the ACLU to do it, but the ACLU didn't take the children, so I'm not giving that. I'm sorry, I gotta take a deep breath, because we do breathe. So you might ask yourself, so where are we going with this? So we got people, we got poverty, we got challenges, and obviously we have inequalities. So let's talk about power. Because who has the power to change this? And I use some folks' resources, and I'm not quoting resources because we ain't got time for all that, but if you need the resources, you can see me afterwards. But according to a study I've used for this presentation, in the United States, the wealthiest 400,000 Americans have more wealth than the poorest 50% of Americans combined. 400,000. Also, according to the same source, they note that when comparing income inequality before taxes, the U.S. is similar to most other developed nations and even ranks less unequal than countries like Sweden and Denmark. I thought an interesting point. While those countries use their tax code, however, to reduce income inequality and fund social programs. However, here in the U.S., we gotta fund space. What is it we got now? We got a space military. We in Star Wars. I can't take it. We don't pay for human services. We can't do that, right? So, I'm not part of the 400,000 people that got much money, because I can assure you I would be sharing it with folks and buy me a couple of other different kind of things I might like in my life. These might be diamonds instead of beads. But I have spent the past 25 years of my life focusing on two things that I know that I can do, and that is that I show up as my best self every day, all the time, as much as I can. And even when I don't, I let people know I haven't had coffee. What do I tell you? What we do at Easter? What's it called? MSM? That means that you might have to take you a minute, a snack, or a nap before I'm ready for you. You may know that? That's what we do. A minute, a snack, or a nap before I deal with you, but I'm gonna try to show up as my best self. The other thing that I can have power over, because as you can see, I had a presentation. I had no power over the fact that it ain't here, right? That I call divine extraordinary fortitude, DEF, because you know when you have plan B, plan C, they might all fall apart. And you gotta hold on to that divine to get you through. So I'm almost done. So what's Ubuntu got to do with it? I said I could show up as my best self, and I could encourage somebody else to show up as their best self. Encourage. I can't force you to do so. I can only encourage you. There's a definition out there by an elder called Credo Mutawa. He's an elder, healer, and teacher in Africa who describes Ubuntu as a compassion brought into colorful practice. And I love that definition because it really makes you think about the integral pieces of Ubuntu. And here's what that means. That means that colorful means that we are all different, right? We all have different experiences. We all have different, therefore what? Perceptions, right? And so Ubuntu is challenging you to do some things. That means that you gotta listen to somebody else's story and hope that maybe you could intertwine those stories and make a new story that allow us to see each other in each other. Imagine the power of that. That place where we see that the pictures are actually all the same because we're talking about what? People, right? So to see each other in each other, we must check our perceptions of one another. So perhaps in the same way that someone assessed that the young white teenager who had just shot 9 people who were sitting and praying in church and was never killed when he was taken by the police, maybe we could have placed that same assessment on Tamir's life. You think?